Well, this is the last Sunday of this class. I'm going to go ahead and start. This is the last Sunday of this class. We have gone through the last 24 hours of the life of Christ if you've been to every session, and if you've not, I think you've been able to pick up on where we were and what was happening. The last 24 hours of the life of Christ before and during the crucifixion. Now, of course, there's a lot more to this story. I just started, Michael, so you're fine, even though you're late. Of course, no, it wouldn't bother him. There's much more to this story than a dead man hanging on the cross. There's much evidence for a miraculous happening some days later when the tomb that he was placed in was found empty. Even though there was a Roman cohort of soldiers that were guarding that tomb and the entrance had been sealed with a Roman seal, nevertheless, that seal had been broken somehow or another. That large stone that was in the front of that was covering the opening had been moved away and the tomb was empty. And there's nothing in Scripture about actually what happened with the Roman soldiers and so on, much anyway. There's some, but not a lot. We don't know what their eventual fate was. They were charged with guarding the tomb, making sure everything was okay. It wasn't. And if a Roman soldier did not fulfill his charge, he could very well have been eliminated. And I don't know what actually happened to them, but it was not a good thing for them. There's other evidence for the resurrection of Jesus just besides the empty tomb, specifically the accounts of those who saw, talked with, and walked with the risen Christ. Over 500 of them, to be a little more precise, and several of the gospel writers wrote about these people who saw or visited with or walked with the risen Christ. So it wasn't just one person saying one or two things about it. There's several pieces of evidence in the New Testament regarding the risen Christ. And then there are the more, shall we say, maybe some of the smaller things that point to the resurrection. The way the grave clothes were left inside the tomb indicate to a lot of people that there was some kind of a, how would I say it, Terry? Maybe just kind of a dissolving of the body and because they just kind of collapsed rather than being rustled around or moved around or unwrapped. Everything just kind of collapsed on itself, as if he just kind of disappeared from there and appeared somewhere else. And to some people, that may be just a little thing. To me, that's pretty important. And Terry, I know Terry wants to say something.
Well, it just, there's not a lot said about that. It's that the grave clothes were lying by themselves. But some of them is even speculation. Maybe it was still in the shape of his body even, yeah. but they were undisturbed.
Yeah.
But we won't pick up on that. I never picked up on until I started reading some footnotes, and I read that and thought, why was that even put in there? Why was that little passage that they were laying there by themselves? They could have done without that, but that makes it.
And he will talk about that in this video. He'll talk about that very point. But yes. The way Jesus appeared in a closed room where followers were gathered, that's another evidence of something that special that may have happened to Jesus. Jesus telling Peter and others, again, to cast their nets on the other side of the boat. That was following his resurrection. He did that once when he called Peter, James, and John to be his disciples. He did the same thing again after his resurrection. Cast their nets on the other side of the boat. That's a virtual repeat of the earlier conversation he'd had with those guys. It's these kinds of things that lend credence, I think, to the fact of the resurrection. You kind of put all of this together, and there's not a whole lot else. There's not much else you can come up with in terms of what actually happened other than that. Okay, for further study on Jesus Christ and specifically his sacrifice, I'm going to recommend, if you can find it, a book And I have one copy, a book by Betty Burton Choate, Choate, and I can give you that information later on if you want it. It's called Jesus Christ, the Eternal Sacrifice. I really like that book. It's, I think you'll find it not only informative, but it will, I'm going to guarantee you that it will change how you think of Jesus as one of the persons of the Godhead. The book is out of print. It's rather difficult to find. I've got a copy that I'm willing to loan. I certainly would want my copy back at some point in time. I looked on Amazon a couple of weeks ago, and Amazon only had 2 copies that were available at the time. So, but you're welcome to look, and you're welcome to get more of information on this. But I would highly recommend that book. It's not a very thick book. It's an easy read. But this lady, well, as I said, I will just guarantee you that it will change how you think about Jesus as one of the persons of the Godhead. Today, we're going to end the class. Most of the rest of this class is going to be this video. We're going to end this class with this, where I'm just going to play a part. This is a one-man play called St. John in Exile. The guy who's doing this is Dean Jones. Of course, he's dressed up as John. That's not how Dean Jones looked in the 1980s when he did this. He's got makeup on and so on. This was taped, as I said, in the 1980s. And this is Jones's portrayal of the Apostle John in his old age in prison on Patmos Island. Some of you may have seen this video. I've played this before on Wednesday evening, I think on Wednesday evening classes. Played it in like 3 parts, that kind of thing. This is just a part of this. In the play, in case you haven't seen this before, John is in prison on Patmos Island. He has received visitors in this play on Patmos Island. The visitors are the audience. So you would be those who are visiting him, and he's carrying on a conversation with the audience. The audience is asking questions of John, and John is providing answers. That's what's happening here. And he talks with them about his time with Jesus, which at this time that the play purports to present was quite some time ago, many years ago. This particular segment that I'm going to play is a part where John talks of Jesus and the disciples in the garden and the crucifixion. He just kind of goes through what we've been going through for the last several weeks. I think I've got this set just a minute or so before the actual time that I want you to notice, so we'll just get kind of a brief introduction here, and then we'll go. We're going to stop there with that. He does go on into the resurrection and so on. This video is in 2 parts. There's an intermission kind of in the middle of it. It's available on YouTube at no cost. You can see the whole thing. I've got a DVD of it if you're interested in that. This portrayal, I think, is the first 2 or 3 times I saw this, it made me uneasy. I don't know if it did you or not, but it really made me uneasy. But the more I watch this, the more I see, we've had this for what, Mom, 35, 40 years. It's that old. And I get it out and I watch it just every once in a while. Just a compelling portrayal of the Apostle John and the life of Christ. There's some humor in it, but there's also this kind of thing as well. Comments, questions?
I felt a little uneased.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I felt a little uneased.
Yeah, And I felt even a little, as many times as I've watched this, I felt a little bit uneasy just standing over there watching this. You know, is Dean Jones overreacting here?
That's what I wonder.
Is he overreacting? When you just read the biblical account doesn't have a lot of the emotion that's in it. But if you were watching your best friend, think of your best friend, and if you were watching them go through what Jesus had been going through, and you were right there and you were seeing it up close and personal, you know, how, and not having the information that you now have regarding the resurrection and the church and all of that. They didn't have any of that at that time. And, you know, the more I think about it, the more I think that he's probably not overreacting to this all that much, if at all. We have, I feel, how do I say this? I think we've sanitized this account and a lot of things that are found in the Bible. I think we read the scriptural account, and again, there's not a lot of emotion there. There's not a lot of, I mean, it's more of a lot of this stuff is just kind of a matter of fact thing. And in addition to that, we're reading a translation, and we're not reading the original language, and I think we lose something in the translation. You know, you agree, yeah, someone agrees with me, Verna, thank you. But I think we do. I think we lose some of the being there and some of the emotion in the translation. And I mean, the translators are trying to get it accurate. They're trying to do it right. And I get that. But I think they sometimes feel like they don't have a lot of wiggle room there, and some of the emotion is not there in the translation. But you'd see a portrayal such as this, and that kind of brings that back in. But not only does it do that, but it challenges what we've always kind of thought and how we've always thought about things. And it brings a different light to some of the things that we see in Scripture. When he quotes Jesus in this, I thought, okay, he's making up stuff that Jesus said. No, he's not making up stuff that Jesus said. It's all in there. There were 2 or 3 places where I had to look it up, but sure enough, it was in there. And so when he quotes Jesus and many of the apostles and so on, it's in the Scripture. Of course, he adds some stuff to it to bring out more of the story, but the quotes are there, and they are accurate.